and say I'ma blow them obstacles out the way for my brighter day. I'm working, but it ain't working out. Yeah, hey, y'all know what I'm talking about. So I take a deep breath and say I'ma blow them dark clouds out the way for my brighter day. We hustle to the top of the mall. See, been pushing ever since I was born. So I take a deep breath and say I'ma blow them obstacles out the way for my.
Well, as we all know, back in the day, there was the stigma with blacks. If you were darker than a brown paper bag, you were not accepted in a lot of communities.
Going on. I think it was the Willie Lynch. I think the division of the light skin and the dark skin, and I think dark skinned people who were in the field wanted to be in the house, you know. And I think that was a part of the separation. That Willie Lynch, how to keep a good slave, to keep them envy, jealous, and resenting each other, was very evident. And I think that's where the division in our own community started.
I think a lot of the praise for light and white is the Lynch syndrome. Like, you start to believe it. You start to believe that you're not better than, or you're not as attractive, or, you know.
We just, I don't know, just from where we come from, it seemed like it's always been the favorite to be light skin, long hair, you know, the whole nine.
In college, I went to a Christian college, and in going to a Christian college in Alabama, Alabama Christian College, which is now Faulkner University, at the time I attended, it was 1% black. The guys who were on that campus, they would not even approach me or have a conversation with me. Yet the white counterparts were totally opposite. You know, more conversational, you know, and it was more in secrecy and not in openness. You know, and so the acceptance still wasn't quite there, but the approach, I was never approached by my dark-skinned brothers.
Now, it's interesting because in that dating era, it was, I always said if it was 4 of my friends and myself, and it was 4 females, I would have been the one who didn't get chosen. Because at the time it was, again, that was that I'll be sure era and all of that deal right there.
But I always get that you're so beautiful to be a dark-skinned woman, or you're actually the first dark-skinned girl that I've dated, and I actually like you. You kind of sparked a new interest in me. That's what I've heard a lot of. And I just feel like that's so
it should be a turn off to you when you say
it is a turn off. It's a turn off. Like, I'm like, okay, well then, now that you see me, you go on to find you another one who you didn't tell that to, because I would have been better off had you not told me.
It's always been stated that lighter has always been better in so many ways, and that the lighter girls were always the prettier girls. They had the longer hair. They had what people would call the better hair. So the dark-skinned girls were the ones who were less attractive. So to find a dark-skinned girl who was attractive means that that person was the exception.
Several challenges. A lot of people tend to think because you are light-skinned black woman that you're more materialistic. In my generation, of course, the word cool is used. You know, you may not be as cool. You're a little bit more self-absorbed, less culturally aware, more into the malls and the shopping and the materialism of society, which is exactly the opposite of probably who I am as a person. So that always surprises people. And it's quite interesting when I see that surprise come across their face when they realize, oh, it's a light-skinned cool girl who knows about who she is. So that's interesting.
The lighter-skinned female, we clashed because, you know, they felt like they were better than everybody else, and I was like, you know better than anybody else, and that's where we had a problem, because they just would look down on people or snub their nose toward folks, and I just wasn't a part of that. You know, and still sometimes I find that behavior in some lighter skinned females. So I was never really, I was attracted to them, but in my mind I programmed myself to say a lighter skinned female is going to have that same type of behavior. So I just never pursued it.
Being a guy, seeing my peers like light-skinned women and going crazy over light-skinned women, long hair and that kind of thing, and even seeing some of the darker skinned brothers, darker than me, you know, I'm not that dark, but darker skin, and how they're treated, really. So just kind of seeing the kind of spectrum of it all. So yes, I've witnessed it, seen around it, been around it, and
But most dark-skinned men seem to choose lighter skin or different races, Hispanic, Asian, whatever the case may be, but anything but somebody that looks like their mama. So I think it's messed up, but what can you do? What can you do?
And it was tough because at that time, you know, growing up in the 60s, you know, it was always light skin, big bush. You know, we came up in that era where the young ladies gravitated towards guys who were light skinned with the, you know, the curly hair, or, you know, we talked about the good hair.
It probably stemmed from our men with low self-esteem probably get a little success and gotta have that piece of arm candy that society thinks is beautiful. So the closest thing to white maybe, or the lighter the better, I'm not sure what it is, but you know, in the 90s when, you know, the Jordans and all that was hot, they all had fair-skinned women on their arm.
I am in the very beginning of my dating life. My very first boyfriend was the same complexion as I, and I do believe that was due to society's impressions on me. I genuinely did care for him as a person and who he was as a person, but I do think that his color and his complexion played a role in how I saw beauty at that time. And that's coming from somebody that was actually attending a Pan-African school at the same time and wore African clothes every day.
As far as dating, you know, growing up dating, I was never attracted to any particular shade. You know, had to be cute, dark, light, didn't make a difference. Had to be able to walk, light, dark, didn't make a difference. Had to have nice teeth, and of course had to smell good. And color never played a factor into it, but through my experiences, I found that I gravitated more toward the darker female. I don't know if that was to validate my blackness or or what, but I just found myself gravitating more to the darker female.
However, about 17, I dated my first dark-skinned guy, and I've heard that the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And as of today, I'm highly attracted pretty much to the darker complexion.
Well, like you said, when it first came out, the Al B. Sure and, you know, the hair, I had the episodes of I don't know, women wanting to be with you because of the hair. You know, like the hair is going to transfer to any child that might be conceived. You know, they're with you because of your hair or your color because they want a so-called pretty baby. When the Wesley Snipes, when the color started to shift, you know, you had individuals talking about, you know, darker berries, sweeter the juice, and, you know, darker men are in, dark chocolate is in. You know, I'm like, I didn't necessarily go with the fad. I'm like,
yes, I prefer dark-skinned men.
Why?
My grandmother always said, the blacker the berry, the sweeter the juice. And all of my aunts, including my grandmother, all have dark-skinned husbands. My father is dark-skinned. And I was just always more attracted to dark-skinned men.
I remember when I was young and you know, you get your allowance or whatever, where a lot of little girls would spend their allowance on, you know, dolls or clothes or, you know, just cute, pretty things. I would spend my allowance on magazines and bleaching cream. You know, I wanted to make sure my skin was lighter. You know, I always tried to get that acceptance through trying to change who I was or to change my physical appearance. So, yeah, so I spent a lot of money on skin lightening cream, which never worked.
I think it mostly affects the little girls. You know what I mean? If they're dark skinned, their hair is short or it's kinky, it's not what's in. It's not what's considered to be beautiful. And we see it in modeling. You'll see beautiful, dark skinned, kinky haired women, but not the children. You usually see light skinned, beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful kids, there's no question, but the industry, the entertainment industry as a whole seems a little bit biased.
It was always, you know, light, dark. You know, growing up with family, they were lighter, and people say things about my nose, my lips, and it was not cool.
I remember as far back as the playground, the little light-skinned girl with the pretty hair. They're always, the teacher's pets are always considered the smart kids, are the ones who could do no wrong. So that thought goes back far.
The ability to be heard. People listened. I found people listened to me, not necessarily because of what I was saying, but because of what I looked like. I found it was easier to get into schools, easier to get into conversations, easier to get into things that most people might not be allowed to get into because I had straight hair and I was light-skinned. It did play a role in allowing me to access some of the comfortabilities, and that's not what I want to say, to access some of the things in society that a lot of other people with darker complexions may not be able to access. So yeah, it did play a role, definitely.
And when I got to 7th and 8th grade, I noticed that I could use my color to my benefit as opposed to being a darker individual. I felt I had special privileges that other students that were darker didn't necessarily, qualify for.
Well, growing up, I heard quite often, you should be a model, oh, they're so pretty, and my mom was actually really attractive too, so it was the whole family, your family's just gorgeous, and we're all light.
As a child, going to school, being called Black Sambo, which was so very hurtful. But back then, of course, the adults were the only ones who thought I had beautiful skin color, but all the kids were very, very mean.
When there were school fights and things like that, the first thing that comes out of the mouth, you black this, or you ugly black that, or it was always black. Black was always considered, it was almost like a dirty word. It was always considered vile or wrong or bad or associated with something bad or evil or the thing or the person that you didn't want to be.
Looking back, we all were young, so it wasn't like, they really knew any better, but it kind of really lowered my self-esteem and made me feel like I wasn't important at all. Like, I just felt like, why am I here? What is my purpose? Because nobody likes me, and I'm just a spot on the wall or something like that. So, felt really bad. I had moments where I wanted to die, because I felt like I didn't fit in.
It's interesting because I don't necessarily know if the teasing was to be hurtful, but because my skin tone was so dark, I think it was just a part of it. I think it was just, it's almost like the guy with the big ears or the one with the big, So my joke, was my skin tone. And so, again, I don't necessarily know if it was the kids doing it to be ugly, but it hurt, because that was something, that I heard quite often.
I hate being called red. I find it very offensive. I was called red, yellow, banana. And I think those are cruel terms because I had no choice.
I even recall my mom saying I had a crush on a dark-skinned girl. And my mom, she's very fair-skinned. And she would say, oh, okay, that's nice, but make sure you get you one of those light-skinned girls so you can have a nice, pretty baby one day. So, I mean, it's just being a part of the African-American culture that it's really sad because we just assume that if you lighter of skin, that you're better and that you have a better opportunity. But I noticed that in kindergarten, there was a difference between the dark-skinned students and the light-skinned students, even being in the all-black school. So it's been going on for years.
Just simple stuff like going to the restroom, being able to turn my assignments in late. I felt like I had an advantage due to that fact. I don't know if it was necessarily color, probably because I was just a good student. But I think it was color because as I grew up, I found that I could still use my color to my advantage.
The white community is less threatened by light skin blacks. That's the truth. That's what it is.
You had the light skins hang with the whites and the dark skins, pretty much the outcasts. And so that was one of the major issues. Before I came into teaching, I was a manager at Starbucks, and a lot of time some of the dark-skinned people got overlooked for promotion. It took them a long time to get promoted from barista to supervisors, but if you were light-skinned or if you were white, you got promoted really fast. And so I saw one of my good friends struggle to get a promotion because she was really dark.
The disadvantage, I think, comes from the darker skinned African Americans because of the fact that they think, in their perception is that I get certain privileges. They feel that they're gonna make sure I'm not getting a certain an advantage or a certain privilege, because they see me and they think that I may have money. They think that I live in a nice house, which like I said, it's just a fantasy. But I feel that because of my skin color, the darker skinned African Americans, they have this preconceived notion that I'm already one of the good old boys with the Caucasians, so they try to make it harder on me.
Society has caused for light-skinned people to be told that they're beautiful. They're externally told they're beautiful all the time. So as a light-skinned person growing up, including myself, you struggle with self-esteem issues. You struggle with, am I really beautiful? Because the world has told you so much that you actually don't value the word you're beautiful or the words you're beautiful anymore. And then you start looking for external ways of making yourself beautiful. So you do the makeup, you do the hair, you do the clothes, and you become more sociable through your material items that you have on. Versus the darker skinned person who doesn't have it as easy in society, who does have to struggle, who has to find an internal or an intrinsic way to value themselves and love themselves. So then by the time that they become adults, they now have more character, they have more personality, they have had more ups and downs and trials and tribulations to be able to develop who they are as a person. And so they tend to have a little bit more swag, character, personality than I tend to find in lighter skinned men. And I think that's because of society and what they've done to us as children.
If I go out, because of my skin color, I'm accused of being 5'0". Everybody thinks I'm 5'0". If I walk into a discount mall, I notice that people start hiding their, bootleg merchandise like I just have this police badge on. And I think that's based on the color of my skin. Because had I been darker, I don't think that incident or the hiding the merchandise would happen. But because I look like 5'0", and I don't know what 5'0" looks like, but they hide the merchandise.
I was discriminated in the South mostly by the dark-skinned people as opposed to the light-skinned people. And I really didn't understand it because how I felt was that I had nothing to do with it. So what they were coming at me with, it wasn't my fault.
And again, I think a lot of it goes back to that Willie Lynch syndrome. It goes back to slavery in that mid, 1700s, early 1700s, where, we were separated. And Willie Lynch did a very good job of, in my opinion, of division. And he had three things when he was talking to the slave owners. He said, I can help you keep good slaves. I can help you keep slaves from running away, keep them obedient, and his thing was keep them envy, jealous, and resented. And when slave masters were raping our sisters and the babies were coming out lighter, they took care of them. I think even the dark-skinned people, because it was so hot in that sun, or not because they were worried about their skin tone, but it was just hot out there. The labor was harder picking the things, and they wanted to be inside. They wanted to do the things in the house. And I think that's where the division came among ourselves. I could be wrong. That's just my thought.
I just believe that we as black people should not judge each other based on what you look like in terms of skin complexion. Like I said before, we have no choice. We have no choice in the way of our complexion, how we come out. And ever since I was a little girl, I've always known what happened to my 14-year-old great-great-grandmother. So that has a place in my heart that I knew that I would never want to date, marry a Caucasian. because my great-grandmother didn't have a choice. And so, if anything, I look at it like, I don't look at it as a good thing. I look at it as a very negative thing in terms of my skin complexion, because it's a part of our history that I'm not proud of.
You know, at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter, and I think that's why this documentary is so important, is that we should not have these separations because of our skin tone. At the end of the day, we're still people. None of us took fill out a questionnaire or a survey to be here, and what color we were going to be, who our parents are going to be, and so why should it matter? What difference does it make, whether you're light or dark? And I've seen people who appear on both sides, not to hire somebody because they're extremely light, or not hire somebody because they're extremely dark. It should not matter, and that's the beauty of what we're trying to do here.
I thought that was the nicest thing to me you could have ever said. Call me that again and watch and see how I square my shoulders, straighten my back, and I lift up my head. That word was so beautiful. I'm so glad you gave it to me. I would wear that title with pride from the crown of my head to the sole of my feet. Call me black. And I guess like some of my friends, you thought that word would offend me. But I can't think of a more beautiful label ever to describe it. You see, when you call me black, let me tell you all the compliments to me you gave. Unbeknownst to you, you call me strong, you call me brave, you call me creative, you call me smart, you call me forgiving. Should we all know that black people have a heart to call me that again? But this time, say it with even more of a passion. Because you see, I wear my black skin like a tailor-made suit that won't ever go out of fashion. You make me think about my ancestors and all the names they were called, but I wear it with the same confidence they did through the rain, the snow, summer, winter, fall. Call me that again. It's like music to my ears. Next to being called a child of the king is the highest compliment that could ever be paid. Not every woman can be called black, and the melanin in my skin can't be duplicated. And there's no scientist formulas in which this dark skin is made. You see, when you call me black, it lets me know that you recognize just where I'm from. I'm from a place that everything and everyone obeys the master, even the sun. You see, you have to be chosen to be called black. I'm telling you, with this dark skin, I will fight. I've already fought through slavery and been bought and sold. Wrongly accused, put in prison, and sometimes even the hole. Fought through water holes and biting dogs, but I'm telling you, this light skin is so tough. It even fights through laws. It makes you laugh when ain't a damn thing funny. And the endurance goes far beyond any resources or money, so call me black again. But unfortunately, you will never hear that beautiful word ever said to you. And just like everyone else, you still don't have a clue, so please continue to call me